call the RCDC meeting to order Monday, September 11th at 12:10. Is that right? Yeah. Let's do a quick roll call. Emily Doran here.
Pat Sheehan here.
Ryan Ryder more or less here.
Bobby Hempling here.
Colin Harvey here.
Okay, perfect. Any public comments here in person or on the Zoom? No? Okay. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. This is discussion and possible action on the minutes from the August 14th, 2023 RCDC meeting. Any comments from the group or a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have first and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. Motion passes. Okay, on to the regular agenda. This will be an update from the retail coach, so I have it in my email, so I will just read from you all. Aaron would have been here. He had a conflict, but he will be here now moving forward every monthly meeting to give us these updates in person. So per the scope of work, which was in the packet, that one pager that kind of outlines timeline of project as well as months. He says we are right on schedule with each task, 1 through 8. On the Rollingwood Plaza, Todd Ruth, he's the owner. He's working with his architect and engineers to kind of think about a redesign of it just being a 2-story, not a 3rd story, which would be in compliance with the code. That he'll come back to us with that to see if that would work with their plans. What we're going to get also from Aaron is an updated list of properties that are coming available. So I don't know if you all knew, like the pizza place that is no longer here, and now there's a new spot. And I haven't been to it yet, so I can't tell you what it is. But that he would be updating us monthly on new businesses that would be coming into the community. That's all I have.
And then I think, didn't he say he's also made progress on private-public partnerships and what those options are and how they might look?
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
I think that was the only other one.
Yes. But he said he will be here in person moving forward, and then periodically through the month there's updates that he would send, and then we can share with the committee. But he's excited. So.
That's good.
Any questions or feedback or thoughts or anything you want me to share? Okay. We'll move on to number 4, discussion and possible action on RCDC project prioritizations framework and sources of funding. And I believe this is Colin?
Yes. I'm going to... How do I advance?
Right or left arrows. That way.
This
Right
one?
or left. Yes.
Okay, so... if you don't, that would be awesome.
A lot of people call me useless, but I'm about to show you how good I am.
Sweet. Okay. We can probably go let's go to the agenda first slide. It's really contents, not the agenda. So this relates back to, we've had a couple of conversations in here related to, hey, could we have a more structured framework around, the way projects are, presented, evaluated, prioritized, et cetera. And I took that as an action. I said I would bring back some thoughts that this group could, think about as potential options. In doing that, I thought it'd be important to just tell you a couple assumptions that I made related to this. Doesn't mean that they're all the assumptions or that they're right or wrong. It's just assumptions that I made in doing so. A quick summary of the current state, make sure we're talking about the same thing. And then one of the things that has become abundantly clear, if you really think about everything that's in, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, both the comprehensive plan as it relates to RCDC items or park plans, which we also have the ability to fund, as we talked about. We've got one on the agenda today. There is far more work to be done from both a financial resource and a human resource perspective to get done with just the $400,000 budget that we have in the bank right now and the recurring revenue of 150-ish K. So I want to put something that in here about how do we grow the pie and how do we make it more efficient, both in terms of the prioritization of projects and the available people that could be helping us to do this. So I summarized some of the objectives from the two plans. I reread both of those documents so that we could really quickly look at those. And then hopefully the discussion is really around recommendations and potential actions. So I'll ask one favor as I kind of go up through bullets 1 through 4. If you materially understand it and you think it's about 80% correct, let me get through that so that we can all spend time on getting people's opinions and thoughts related to things we might actually do. Okay, let's do the next slide. Okay, just these are basic assumptions. Hopefully it doesn't shock anyone. It's like, I think we all know that the north side of the commercial corridor is inconsistent with the neighborhood. I think we all know that the Rollingwood Park is a valued part of our community and needs continued investment. The comprehensive plan, which was finished in 2022, and the Rollingwood Master Park plans collected feedback from both the commercial corridor and the park. That's what they did. I'll spend a little more time on that, but not much. But to be clear, neither plan established a design or an implementation roadmap. They basically summarized what the community said was a priority, and they really gave us frameworks for making decisions. So those are some assumptions I made as part of this, and we can debate that at the end if it's relevant, or just agree with the assumption and move on. Okay, I think the next one. So a couple of elements on current state. So as I mentioned a second ago, we've got about 400K in the bank, and we get about 150K a year, plus or minus. That's directionally correct, I believe. We now have 3 things to help guide us with prioritization and scope and framework for what we should even be talking about. So we've got a 100-page study plus of the park and some very clear recommendations around priorities. Same thing with the 2022 comprehensive plan. And we also have completed phase 1 of the retail coach, who's come with a series of recommendations that are now codified in a phase 2 executed statement of work to start getting these things done. So we have all those things. RCDC at the highest level, it can fund park improvements and commercial development projects. There's nuance in there that we talk about, but I think we all agree at 50,000 feet it can do that. The point I made a little bit earlier, and I think you'll start to see this, existing and forecasting funding requirements, for all of these things is going to be in excess of what RCDC can finance. So again, how do we maybe grow the pie? I think that given the nature of some of our debates in this room, there's an opportunity to be more efficient in the way we look at projects. And then again, the point on scalability of what other things can we access to have more money at our disposal. Okay. So a couple of different thoughts on the efficiency. So this gets into the point of a potential framework. So no matter what, and this is true, I don't know if I've ever shared this, but part of the early background of about the first 10 years of my career is I used to help Fortune 500 companies prioritize their capital expenditures, and almost all of them have more things they want to do, no matter how big that budget is, than actually can be, but they have a framework that's rooted in their overall business strategy, just like we have a framework that comes from our community related to those 2 plans. We can actually write that down and use that as a way in which we look at projects, evaluate projects, and select or prioritize them. I'm not saying this has to be the way. We can also start to have, always we'll have one-off things, but we can start to have maybe a more structured cycle of, hey, there's a portion of the year where we've got, people are submitting projects and they're focused on that. We're evaluating those projects and we're executing them. And then you'll have some things in flight, but just a little more structure might help us be a little bit more efficient. Again, that could be done in a number of different ways. And we should use the community feedback from these plans and agree on what they're telling us so that we can actually have a framework, as opposed to pretty much kind of an ad hoc conversation that's still directionally related to the commercial corridor and the park, but most of our conversations go all over the map, to be honest, if we're fair. And I think we could do a better job. Okay, so that's from an efficiency perspective. From a scalability standpoint, we'll talk more about what we might be able to do, is how do we get more stuff to do all the things we need to do. So right now we have the RCDC current tax allocation that's in place. There are things called tax increment financing, TIF bonds, that are super interesting. We've not really done much to explore them. I think we should, and again, that can get into the discussion part. I was just sort of brainstorming what else is out there. Public-private partnerships, we're already engaged retail coaches showing us the art of the possible, what other communities have done there, so that's another potential source. We always have talked developer investment, right? If we fix certain things, it might make it more attractive for them to come in and co-invest with us. You can do project-based funding, some of the things like what Kevin just did and Phil just did with the baseball fields, right? That's another thing you can continue to do. Another thing you can potentially do as it relates to the park is you can actually set up a private endowment where a combination of maybe RCDC funds and individuals can put that in, and that could be another channel of funding. I say that with relationship to the park versus relationship to maybe RCDC commercial development, simply because the park has got something that's, it has emotional tie to it. It has the ability for people to go, yeah, I would like some of my legacy to be into that. Whereas, hey, getting another restaurant doesn't have that effect. So anyway, so that's just, again, just a brainstorm on that. Okay, so I went, and then some recommendations and potential actions for development, just related to commercial development.
Did I hit that?
I think there's a slide that's missing, or it's out of order, which,
No, I think what happened is I hit the, remember I told you
Okay.
it wasn't useless?
okay. This is the slide I was expecting. Okay.
I'm going backward. I'm thinking I'm going backwards.
I want,
There we go.
okay,
Now
now go to the next slide. Okay, don't do anything else.
I'm not going to touch it.
just for a second. Okay. All right. So as I mentioned, I went back through and I had read both of these plans a couple times, but before being done with this, I reread it again and said, hey, in the appendix of that, it has 50 very specific recommendations in the comprehensive plan. There's 6 or 7 of them, and I may have missed one, that are pretty straightforward, that align very well to RCDC. It was we're supposed to build a positive business climate. That's in process. That's a lot of what we're doing with the retail coach. We're supposed to codify the commercial zoning recommendations. I believe that we're funding that through the legal work that's in process. I've never heard of commercial zoning being funny. It's wow, I didn't expect that. Sorry. No, you're fine. I just was curious if I missed the fun of that. Got it. Connect residential and commercial areas along BKs, encourage restaurant development, create a safer pedestrian crossing across BKs at Edge Grove, and then convert Old Delano Lane into a usable hike and bike trail. Like I said, I probably missed 1 or 2 other things, but those are very clear things that align to what RCDC might do and why our projects might align to that if we start to use this built into a framework. And then we can go to the park one. Park one was pretty straightforward too. We got drainage improvements that are needed. They want to extend and improve the walking trail and accessibility between the upper and lower parks, create multiple use of the fields for different sports programming and unstructured play. Very carefully worded here. It said we want a separate off-leash area for dogs. It does not say we want to get rid of the one that exists. It just said we want to add one. Just writing what I read. Expand programming for all ages, increase and maintain the tree canopy, and expand native gardens. That's all in there. And I think aligns to a lot of the conversations we have. So a lot of conversations we have, I don't think are out in left field per se compared to these things, but without the very specific structure built into the framework of looking at projects, prioritizing, and executing them, we can have a lot of ambiguous conversation and a lot less action than I think we're capable of. Okay, I think we're ready for the next. Okay, now I've brainstormed and jotted down a few potential actions. I'll drain them on these. It's 4 on this one, I think 4 or 5 on the next slide, and then I'll be quiet and we can start having a discussion about any or all of everything that's here. So, first one here: private endowment for the park with $50,000 from RCDC and an ongoing annual commitment of $25,000 to be supplied by private donations, driven by Park Commission fundraising. Thinking behind this, we're always going to have some level of ask related to the park. And right now, because of the way we're structured, both from a funding and a governance perspective, we have way too many people chasing pretty simple projects that probably should just get done. And so this is a look towards efficiency and expanding human resources. We have an entire park board that is empowered with absolutely no power and no money. Basically, no money, therefore no power. They're super passionate about the park. Let's let them be passionate and effective about the park, is what this suggests. If this is the right way to do it or not, I don't know. But it's a way of doing it. They need to have a governance model, to basically say, hey, it's not for maintenance, it's for capital improvements, and it maybe has certain dollar levels and things like that. We probably need to underwrite the development of the endowment itself. That's going to take a little bit of legal work and et cetera. But then they would have something in there to get things done, as well as a vehicle by which they could fundraise and continue to make it hopefully a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of thing. You'll see bullet 3 is the same on both of these pages. It's standardized project intake forms, submissions, approvals, and execution schedules. It's not saying we can't do anything out of schedule, but let's just start having some structure. Phase building projects should be in accordance with civil engineering plan for long-term municipal building plans and codified in governance model. I think a lot of that is going to be taken care of by simply the fact that this structure is in scope of one of the bonds, and this structure sits right in the middle of all this stuff. So once you start doing things to this, you're going to have to do a lot of the civil engineering it's going to take to make sure that everything else that we want to improve is done correctly and can handle the load and all of that good stuff. So I think there's might be definitely a kill two birds with one stone there. And then, like I said, we've got to have an out of project schedule exception process. We don't want to be so bureaucratic we can't get something done because there's a great idea and there's money for it. And then the last slide, and I'll stop. Okay, so same thing related to RCDC. Project prioritization schema that's based on the commercial development objectives from the plan and the development of standardized project forms, submissions, and approvals. Survey and define the easements along Eanes Creek to the extent it's not done to make sure we really understand the boundaries of that city-owned land. Create a wide range plan to clear and stabilize that Eanes Creek area where some of that stuff is going on right now that I think Gavin has done a little bit to date. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Without taking on what the developers might do in the future once we have created more stability and a stronger barrier in that green space there between the creek and the commercial corridor and the neighborhood. And then the last one is I think we should look. I did a lot of reading on this. I'm no attorney, but it's really interesting what you can do with this tax increment financing concept. You can get a lot more done. I mean, it's usually done in a government bond structure, but you're basically having the opportunity to get loaned money based on the future designed economic impact of that whole area and what it can and what it can produce with its future state value proposition as opposed to its current state. But you can do really interesting things around that, inclusive of it could fund just the purchase of land. So part of it could be whatever our master plan is, not only being dependent on what a developer wants to do, potentially just relieving a developer that just wants to be done with the land and cash out. I'm not saying that's the answer, but that would add a significant boost if we think it's the right vehicle for some of these things that we want to do. And so that's it. I may have done more than I was asked to. I don't know, but
Good job.
That's great. It's fantastic.
so
That was
what-
very helpful, Colin. Thanks.
Anyway, so what are folks' thoughts on some of these things? At the highest level, does everybody agree putting in a framework based on the priorities of these plans to help us select projects is a good idea?
Yes. I also like the fact that there's a lot of thought that the RCDC is kind of rudderless and just meeting to meet. And this shows that not only is there future plans, but there has been work that's been put in getting these things to where we're at right now with the comprehensive plan, the park plan, the retail coach. Now we have something to actually move forward from.
Agreed.
I'm not talking anymore. So you guys, feedback, thoughts. Does it generate new and interesting ideas? Does it have things in there that concern you? Anybody? I'm just throwing that out there.
I'd like to have a copy of the presentation so that I
Yeah.
can think through it and look at it.
Yeah, you can
Email us
certainly
a
have
copy.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Abel, what is our financial situation now? We don't have the usual monthly report on our material.
I couldn't get all the information.
Do
We're
we?
sitting at 400,000-ish.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you how
And-
much you got plenty of textbook that I can do.
What, and that's like 400,000,
Yes.
right, after we just made the
And
recent.
then
200,000 that we transferred, we've got
300.
333,000.
333,000.
That's in text pool only.
That's in text pool,
Yeah.
correct. And then we left, it's like 100 or 150, yeah,
You almost got 500.
almost 500.
And our income's what, 130, 150?
150.
It's about 150, yeah.
I also like the idea that it's kind of setting the tone for the park commission that, you know, at the last meeting, you know, the way that I watched it is kind of pushing back and saying that, hey, we're anti-park or that we're not doing what they need us to do. And I don't think that's true. I think that we have just said,
Bring us
we're
the
an
projects.
economic development corporation.
Yeah.
That's what we're here to do. If we're going to do park improvements, my feeling is it needs to be that it's driving some type of economic development, a quid pro quo. You know, if you're going to do, just as an example, you know, if you're going to do things for the park, they should create revenue of some sort.
Not
So
necessarily.
But how
it
do
doesn't
we do that?
have to, no, but,
No.
but I'm just giving my opinion. But here's the thing is, it doesn't have to, and there are places where it makes perfect sense for a community development corporation to fund park projects. In this case, I just think that it should drive economics. But by doing this and putting $50,000 into it, creating the endowment and using RCDC money to do it, and then committing to funding, they know what they have to go with. And it's not a, hey, come beg the RCDC every time they need a project.
Well, let me speak to that. The park endowment is a great idea, but it's not a function of RCDC. It's not a park improvement, and it's not a business improvement. You're just putting money over in another pot. And the pot is here that we're responsible for as directors by law. And that's not a function of what the law says. We give money away to the park commission. They need to have a project, and they've done this before, over the last 10 years. They come in with the project, explain it, have it bid, have all the paperwork, and we either say yay or nay, and then it goes to the city council for final approval. We don't sign a check. So, I mean, given, if the park commission wants to raise an endowment and get donations from everybody individually, that's one thing.
Mhm.
But for us to be funding it, I don't think is the correct use of our money under the law.
Okay, I actually have no idea.
Yeah.
Megan, can you opine as to whether or not RCDC could allocate funds to an existing endowment, like with our understanding it to be used for?
Understanding doesn't count.
Well, I mean,
Well,
so
I-
we've talked
I-
about is
I
the
don't-
park plan and the projects identified in that park plan. And so if it's a question of, you know, I mean, you're saying an amount, but into an endowment, but it really would be a question of if RCDC is saying, let's go with the first 20 projects on your list, and that total is 50,000, then I think it's just a question of how is it structured.
Okay.
You could
Does
just
that make
earmark
sense?
it if
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
your
that's
point,
fine
that
too,
if you
yeah.
say, hey, we can't do an endowment. 'cause
But
it
you need to have
doesn't
that
make
come up
sense.
with the projects.
You can
can't
say,
throw the
here's
money
what
out
we'll
there.
commit to annually.
We'll commit to, you know, more than that if it's necessary. We built the wall over there for $120,000. You know, we built a park deal up there for $50,000. It's not the amount of money. It's you've got to have good quality projects that have a need for the community to be done.
I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, I think we are.
Yeah, I think so. I think the only thing, again, and there's probably other ways to do it, and but I think we would benefit greatly by some of the simpler projects.
Sure.
Like I don't think this group should be talking about a $3,700 door.
No.
You know, and I don't think Kevin should have to champion that from city council. I'm just trying to figure out a way in which some basic stuff can just get done quickly.
By the park commission.
By the park commission, and we could still do it Yeah, that's where like an earmark or something like that, or a notional earmark or
Yeah,
something like
sure.
that.
Put it in the budget.
Yeah, just say this, we're just gonna do this, and it also doesn't preclude us from something larger, as you said.
Yeah.
But the park commission has to come to us with those projects, right?
Right.
And that's not happening. And so how do we incentivize that relationship? And incentivize may not be the right verbiage, but
I don't know that you need
Do
to
well.
incentivize it. They've got lots of ideas. You just have to tell them what the process is. And tell them that we're committed to funding X dollars.
well,
a
after I
year.
watched the last park meeting, it sounds like they have a lot of ideas. They don't know how to come together and agree on those ideas. So then what happens is you know, Kevin Glasheen is up here saying, yes, there's all these great, there's this need, right? But it doesn't feel collaborative with the park commission, right? And so I'm just, we can't solve relationships, but we can at least try to do some goodwill with them. And so how do we do that?
Well, I think that by earmarking the funds and saying, hey, here's what we're willing to do. Now all of a sudden they know, yes, there is
Okay.
money and willingness to do it. It also, you know, in the last meeting, you know, you heard them say, well, there's this project and this project and this project. And it's almost like, you know, the camel's nose getting under the tent, so to speak. You know, it's not that. Here's the money that we're allocating. Are there other portions of money that we could spend? Yes, but don't expect it. This is what we're providing so that we can use these funds for the commercial corridor, which is what I think is a priority.
And I also don't want to lose sight of, regardless of mechanics, and I think we just came up with another way to do the exact same thing, so that's awesome,
Yep.
is let's not lose sight of the other thing that I was trying to convey is there's way more that needs to be done than we've got
Then we have
money
the money
for.
for, right?
And so I want to make sure we're doing some of these other things as well. And so maybe to answer your question, Emily, is part of it sounds like a lack of understanding maybe of what they can or should be doing on related to the process, which is we maybe just need to go to the meeting and explain to them, this is the project intake form. This is the amount that we're notionally allocating, but you can also get more if you come up with a really good idea. And start to prioritize those projects. Expect that you're going to get funding from us at a minimum of this, but you need to start doing these things. And the one ask is back to we have more stuff than money. Is we highly recommend, and so we could
Prioritize.
prioritize, but two, we're missing a major opportunity by not privately fundraising within this community for long-range capital things
Agreed.
that people could have their name on in the park. I mean, that's a lot of stuff was done like that around the hike and bike trail. That's one mechanism. They also have a private partner, a P3 thing. But anyway, we should ask them to start doing that. Start doing something. Is really the ask. But I feel like they feel like, I mean, I watched that meeting as well, and you know, a couple of people walked out, and they basically were like, we don't feel like we're part of the process. We don't feel like we're heard. We're told we don't have any authority and we don't have any money. So what the hell are we doing? I would concur if I was sitting in their shoes, and I think we're trying to say that's not true. Let me show you why.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Okay.
Okay. So that's good.
I'm a little afraid of the slippery slope you open when you start talking about people putting their names on things in the park. We've had those discussions with some community anger's too strong a word, community disagreement about things like putting signs on the baseball field, advertising signs on the baseball field. I mean, that just did not go over in this
It's
community.
people with more time on their
But
hands.
on the other hand, a bench with a plaque on it, we've done those several times, but that's not to say your concept is wrong, it's to say there's a slope there.
Well, I think that's why I put policies and a governance model around that. Another thing that's really good from a decision-making framework is if you go back and look at that park plan, it speaks to a lot of the importance around a cohesive design and gives very good examples of what's meant by that. So one, it helps you navigate some of this stuff. Some of it's people with too much time, I would agree as well. But it gives you a way to think about that and put some rules down on paper on how they're going to, because I would like a lot of that work to have been done around the project before it gets here, right? And then to have thought about all of those things and worked through it. But I don't think anybody's going to get that mad if somebody wants to, you know, completely redo the kids playground and have, you know, a small little sign there that looks like the one on the bench. If we debate that, we might as well all go home.
Yeah, exactly. Please.
All right.
But
And I think when you develop these project forms, it probably needs to have some reference back to the master plans. A lot of effort by a lot of people went into those plans.
agreed. And thank you for saying that. That's what I think is that we also are losing sight of, is that no, they did not tell us exactly how to go do those things, but man, you look at those things, there's thousands of hours into both of them. And then are they perfect? No. But are they directionally correct? Yes. And is it to tell you what the community wants? Yes. So let's just do it. Let's start doing it. I think you're 100% right on that, Brian. But yes, we would, tactically speaking, that stuff would all need to be embedded into the project forms themselves, as well as the scoring criteria. You know, when you've got, you know, hopefully like 30 projects that we're looking at from multiple different sources, they're going to come in with that data, and it's going to be our job to sort of rank, you know, which 20 are we going to do?
We're gonna have to adopt a budget proposal at some point, very near future, or the city council, I guess, will adopt a budget for us. I don't know what the process is going to be. But, are we suggesting, Kevin, that we pick a number out of the air and put that in a budget now for this year? Or is this all, we're talking about a direction we're going to move and we'll amend the budget later in the fiscal year? Because the budget's open right now for the next 20 days, well, next 19 days. There being 30 days in September, and I think we have to adopt it by the end of September, don't we?
So the budget was approved last month. Council will be, possibly approving y'all's budget this month.
Okay. So we'll have to
I
amend it.
don't
We'll have to-
recall that we approved the budget.
No, but the city council approves the overall budget, and then we send to them if we want to add projects or et cetera to it, then they
We
will.
approved the budget last meeting with the general understanding amongst all of us that we would have to probably make changes
Exactly.
to
Amend it.
some of these
Yeah.
things.
Amend it,
Yeah.
going forward.
Right. And so if we want to, I mean, if RCDC committee wants to have a motion to put that into the budget, then we should proceed with that if that's what the group wants to do.
Can we say that we're gonna commit in this budget year, and then we have a commitment going forward that this is how much you'll have every year? It's not set in stone, but we can
Correct.
just, again, it's an earmark, it's an understanding between the two committees of what they have.
And every budget season, we can reassess.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So I need a motion.
I make a motion that we set aside or earmark $50,000 for a park, for parks use, has to follow the capital requirements of the RCDC, but we do that for this next budget year.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Do we all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
I want to abstain on that because I just don't have,
I'm abstaining
have
too.
the budget in front of me, I don't have the financials in front of me, I don't have this in front of me, except I've seen it on the screen. And I'd sure like to see a little bit more thought before I voted on something like this. I'm in favor of the direction you're going.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
don't know
again,
what
it's an
I don't know
earmark,
what-
it's not set in stone, they would have to come to us for
Sure.
the money.
understand,
What we're
but
saying is we're
what is the-
committing to the park department.
What is the effect you're having on the budget that we allegedly approved or we approved last month?
Nothing.
I mean, nothing changed. We just,
Just putting a line item in.
we
it.
put a line item in that says if the park comes to us with $25,000 worth of ideas, we fund them. If it's $55,000, then we reassess that extra $5,000. We agree, we haven't agreed to
I think
today.
the only thing we're doing maybe differently is we're trying to make a little stronger statement to the park commission that we're highly supportive
Yeah.
of them being enabled to get things done. But we're not taking away any of the process, associated with what we have to do, Pat, to your earlier point, right, of we still have to make sure it follows the rules.
Right.
Well, and the city council's got to approve it too.
And the city
Exactly.
council, it doesn't change any of that, it just says,
Yeah.
That we're not sitting here arguing over, like it was the last meeting, of 45 minutes for the fence.
that's right.
I mean, I would like us to eliminate spending mental and
Well,
physical.
you're gonna have,
Well, but
you're
we
talking
could-
about 30 projects. You're gonna have definite agreement on them.
Sure.
And definite disagreement on them.
Sure.
So you're gonna.
We'll go through the process for
well,
sure.
Yeah, so I mean, it's still, you're not doing away with that, Emily.
No, I agree with you, Pat. I just think we've got to, I want the park commission to feel that they have our support and that we're opening up the, hey, bring us the exciting projects and let's talk about it, because that has not been happening.
Well, I don't know that we can fix the park commission's problems
No, agreed.
from here.
But we can
But-
have an act of goodwill.
Well, we've
But
always
it's
had
not-
goodwill with the Parks Commission if they'd show up and ask for projects. I don't know of anyone that we ever disapproved. So the Park Commission, if it's dysfunctional, it's gonna continue to be dysfunctional. I mean, I'm just trying to be realistic,
Yeah,
okay?
I hear you.
Yeah, no, I
Don't disagree with you
I
at
have
all
a
on that.
hypothesis based on just, again, having watched the last session, that the majority of any observed dysfunction is a product of people not feeling like they have any ability to affect change materially. And I think we're just trying to, I think by doing two things, by making this statement potentially through the budget, that if we started funding, like everything under the sun, we're gonna always make sure there's, 50 grand or 25 grand that you guys can just come after with legitimate projects that goes through
Yeah.
pretty quickly.
Okay.
And secondly, that I think we should show up to their next meeting
Mm-hmm.
and do a smaller version of this, just focused on how we would like to interact with them in the project forms and things like that we're putting in
That'd
place.
be good.
Because I would like us, like we've talked about from the very beginning, is I don't want to spend 45 minutes arguing about a fence
Every week.
every week. If we set aside the 25, 50,000, we're all agreeing as a group, if it aligns with what we want to do to move forward and meets the governance of this committee, then we do it. And we don't have this toggle back and forth. Did you want to say something?
We do have to approve, I think, to me, I was looking at it, and that's why I wanted to just get clarification, and maybe Ashley as well. So we're talking about making an adjustment to the current budget that's been approved and authorizing staff to go make that adjustment. You would be coming back with an amended budget, which would then also go forward to city council. But that amended budget is simply identifying a line item for these funds. But you're right. I mean, there is
Still a
a
process.
difference between, hey, I know the park's like, oh, we got $50,000 this year. Here's our projects, versus I've got a project for $4,500 and there's anywhere in EDC's budget that they're going to do parks projects. So now we've got to go convince them to even consider
Yes.
doing park
Exactly.
projects. So just want to make sure
That's
I was
part
understanding
of
that.
my goodwill that we're talking about here, is that they see we are vocally as a group and putting it out there. It's in our budget that we are setting aside this money to move things forward, have progress.
Towards the park plan.
Exactly.
Yeah, not inventing things out of the sky.
Right.
No, not of anything out of the sky.
Back to Brian's point,
Yeah.
all that work's been done, let's not throw it away.
Right.
A lot of people feel
A
like
lot
that
of
was a
people
waste
put
of
in a
time,
lot
and
of-
it doesn't need to be.
I don't want it to be wasted.
Cool. All right, well, so we just ended up hung up on that, though. Where are
So we have 3 approval and 2 abstain.
Okay.
So motion approves? Do you want to repeat it one more time? Okay.
I was trying to double check bylaws. I think you can approve that we're just giving direction to staff
We're just-
to come back with.
Exactly, it's just putting this
We're
50,000,
not going to vote on the actual budget with those numbers massaged and changed up.
Correct.
At the
Right.
next meeting.
Correct.
So not to remove that recommendation on council.
Can we look and see if we can fund the legal work for the endowment so that we can get that set up so that people can make contributions, would that be a use of our money that we could use?
I'm happy to look at that.
Okay.
Of that 50?
Yeah.
So that by next meeting, we can look at that, Megan? Okay.
Well, and that would just be something we could share with them when we went to their meeting that says, hey, the
Yeah.
other side of this is grow the pie, please.
Right.
And we found out we can, if you
It's
put forth a
possible,
project
yeah.
related to this fund, that piece, we just can't donate to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And we'll distribute those slides, Brian, to everyone.
Okay.
I didn't finish them until this morning, sorry. It's my old day job thing gets in the way sometimes.
Had nothing to do with the football game or anything like that.
Yeah, not like a late football game. And then I guess number 5, so we're moving on. Number 5, this was sort of encapsulated in what we just talked about. Unless,
60s too.
But do we have any ability to ballpark the needs for commercial development since we have action items but no results from our retail coach on exactly what it would be that we were supposed to do? I mean, we're just shooting
we're
in the
waiting
dark.
from the retail coach,
Phase 2.
having them come back to us from the Chinatown, area of what that is gonna look like. We won't have that until the next meeting, of what the estimated cost would be from his
And
side.
I think we do need to define to the slides. We need to define what are the easements back there, because if you look, there's some Rollingwood owned land that comes up around the west side of some of that commercial, but there's got to be an easement down that Eanes Creek.
Yeah.
But I don't
Yeah.
see it on any of the stuff that I have access to. So somewhere there's easements that would allow us to do that.
Hopefully it's at least in the plats of the various things that were done along
Yeah.
that area, but it might
Well,
be
they would.
that some of that was so old it wasn't done that way. But you're right, we need to figure out what we've got back there, and frankly, I haven't done a TIF in 30 years, but the tax increment financing thing, but dealing with drainage and flooding issues along that creek would be the most likely thing that would be qualified for a TIF. You can't just use money for a TIF to do anything and everything. It has to be focused on a particular project that a developer's doing and that it has public benefits, and then you allow the public cash flow to be debited somewhat to pay for those improvements.
Right.
The developer does it, or a bond issue does it, or something, and then they get a tax forgiveness to make up for it. I'll leave that to the political leaders here to figure out whether they can sell that to this community, because you're saying you're gonna get a break on your taxes that I'm not gonna get on my home.
What I'm saying right now
That's
is
what a
we just
TIF
need-
is, though.
Yeah, no, I get it. What I'm just saying is we need to figure out what's back there before we even talk about TIF
I
or
agree,
anything else.
I agree. And I don't know,
Who owns the creek?
It's the way that I see it, the landowners own down to,
Center line?
no, because I don't think it's navigable waterways, but it's just, they own the two properties from the commercial side and then the residential side just butt into each other. So I'm assuming, just because I've heard about how we have this available, that it must be an easement that the city holds, because the only city-owned land is on the west side of all that, at least that I see.
Like by the car wash.
does
Yeah,
does
to the
a
west of
city-
the car wash.
does a city map with that kind of information exist? It
Should.
seems like it should.
I would expect that it
We
does.
have,
In our,
yeah, we have
or,
a
I mean, we
GIS
talked
map
about
that-
last time needing maybe to do a survey to know exactly where the points are and what the slopes were. But
No, eventually
the
you would if
city,
you're
the
gonna do
city
construction.
engineers doing all the drainage work that have been done over the last few years have to have some of that information.
You'd think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if there is a GIS map, that should have it.
Yeah, and like you said, the only city-owned property is across behind the Shell. There's no other part further down that's city-owned, so, looking at TCAD now.
So,
But when I look at the maps, at least what I have, the land behind the shell is privately owned.
By not, I don't think it's even the shell owner. I think it's
No,
somebody
it's
different.
somebody else. That's its own piece of property. Again, my maps may be
Huh.
incorrect, but
Have you gone to the tax roll maps?
no, I have not.
Okay, that's easy to do.
I'm using Onyx.
That's
is all
easy
I'm
to
using.
do.
Yeah, the land directly behind the shell is the city of Rolling Woods, that's kind of that lot over there, but as far as everything else on the other side of Edge Grove down, it looks like just those commercial properties butt up against
The creek.
the residential properties on the other side. It doesn't, I'm sure there's something to do with the waterway that's not, you can't develop in it, but it doesn't appear that that's,
Yeah, when you hop to the other side of Edge Grove on South Crest heading east, that front part of the creek, which I guess would be the north side of it, is actually owned by the property owners across the street. Whereas where Gavin and I live on the other side, it's some mixture of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, like I said, I see 3/4 of an acre behind the car wash, and then Dwight Davis, it looked like, had some property behind the shell, but it's a big
Okay.
property.
Do we just do we take an action item to either figure out through somebody on this team and the city, we either have the information or it's easily accessible,
Or we don't.
or we don't?
I'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah, seems to me we should ask a representative from the city's engineering organization to show up and do
Okay.
a little presentation for us.
Yeah, maybe that's what the step
Or
is.
just a
Yeah.
plat, yeah.
So can I have a motion?
A motion to figure out the land we own and don't own.
Do I have a
Second.
second?
I
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 What are we motioning?
Okay, motion
In
carries.
favor of figuring out what have we got, yes.
Yes. Okay, number 6, discussion and possible action on sources of potential income for both the park as well as the commercial corridor, which we've alluded to a bit in these slides of, is it private philanthropy that we're raising for the endowment for the park, which we will look into? Is it this TIF, other ideas that have come up here, but I guess, is there other, hello?
Thought it was me that hit the button wrong.
Yeah, I was like, did you hit a
Not
button?
this time. Hands free.
But are there other sources of income that we want, as a group, want to talk about?
So I feel like we're Megan's going to look into whether or not we can fund the creation of the endowment. And to the point of the discussion of this whole group, before we even investigate a TIF, we really need the answer to the question that Bobby raised.
Okay.
So we probably
Table this, number 6?
We probably
Okay.
table that until we have those 2 inputs.
Fine with me?
Second to table.
We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll table action item, agenda item number 6, excuse me. Number 7, discussion and possible action on a framework for the allocation of RCDC financial resources.
I think we've already discussed it.
Which is a
Well,
part
that
of what
gets
we've
back
already
to our
discussed.
Yeah, there was kind of an initial amount that we said, hey, this would be available, kind of kickstart it. There'll be an ongoing commitment of, something that we'll define as we go forward. And, it represents about 15% of the ballpark of the RCDC budget, is what those numbers equate to.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the funding, I would say, would probably go towards this commercial development. That's what we would primarily use the RCDC funds for.
And I think this also infers the creation of some of the tactical tools that I think everybody agreed upon, which is, hey, I'm going to have this project submission form needs to incorporate the aspects of the comprehensive plans that allow you to go, hey, it's like, hey, does it relate to this? Does it relate to this? So you can check those things off in the form, and then an overarching sort of prioritization framework. So I think everybody's agreeing, let's use those as guides. Let's put them on paper. So I think what we probably
Let's create these submission
let's just
forms.
create these things, review them, hopefully in the next meeting if it can get done that quickly, and have that be, do we approve this process that's now on paper?
Okay, and I know we have an old version of a submission form that we can just go through and make updates to based upon the plans, and then get those for the next meeting,
Yep.
if that sounds good. Okay. So there's really no action here, it's more of a discussion.
Yeah, I think there'll be an action next time on a
Yeah.
lot of this stuff.
Okay? Okay. Move on to number 8, discussion and possible action on a park commission request regarding funding of a capital improvement solution to address erosion due to the drainage by the field house in the park with an approximate budget of $30,000. I believe this is Mr. Glasheen.
31.6. You wanna add that?
Well, I just want to say,
Oh.
my name's Victoria Johnson. I'm on the Parks Commission. So I've been watching the RCDC meetings, and I understand the frustration from both the park side and the RCD side very well from just the discussions. I did put this agenda item on the Parks Commission.
Mhm.
I'm very much in favor of it, as are most Parks Commission members. I am new on the Parks Commission, so I haven't attended as many meetings as I would like to be able to address what's going on in the Parks Commission. But what I can tell you is there is a lot of frustration with not having a budget, not having any power, and then trying to figure out what would people accept. And why go to all the work of presenting a plan if it takes funds just to present the plan. We all know there's drainage issues in the park. In order to get anything done in the park, we need a really viable drainage study. There's erosion control that we can do that won't contribute to the drainage issues, which is why we were very much in favor of this plan that we are bringing to you today. That said, we also, if y'all that watch the meeting understand that we've also asked for a drainage study to be done on the park, because without that, nothing's really actionable that needs to be done. It's a lot of money. We all know that. So it's a very helpless place to be. What little things can we do without a bigger understanding? And unfortunately, the $30,000 study or whatever amount was allocated for the park plan did not have a drainage study included. So we do kind of feel like, where do you start? Because it gets monumental at that point, and what will be accepted. Fundraising is difficult because the community got very divided several years ago and are suspect or suspicious of what might my money go to if I just put it in a fund for the park. So it's agreed, on my part anyway, that if we were to go fundraise, we need actionable plans. To get actionable plans, we need studies. So that's what I'm doing here today, to kind of let you know what my understanding of what's going on in the park is about, and the Park Commission is about, and also to let you know we're very in favor of this plan, and I'll let Councilman Glasheen speak to you about it, because he did all the speaking with the guy who's going to actually implement the wall and the retaining pond, or not retaining pond, French drain, if we get it approved. So thank you.
Okay. Has there ever been a civil engineering study on the park, or nothing?
We don't have it if there has been. There's only the study from Nudge, and
We have like a topographic survey, I have to dig through some of the older reports to see if we have.
And when
but
was
the
that?
Parks Commission doesn't have the topo.
I think we've sent it out in the past, but it's just, it's not something we've considered at a meeting. But I mean, the city does have a topo survey. It shouldn't have changed too much, hopefully, but it might have some.
Just one more comment on that. Thanks for coming here, by the
Yeah.
way. I think that alone is very helpful
I know.
for both groups.
Well, I'll be here from now on if I need to be.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm new to the Parks Commission.
Yeah.
I've just been sitting back and watching. A lot of our meetings got canceled, so it's hard to know where to start.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it's
Cool.
evident that this group is very interested in making starting a little
Really
easier.
appreciate what you said. I had asked that very question before, because my understanding had been that we had been receiving money as a Parks Commission to do things in the park from RCDC, and we're told that's not the right way to do that. Without those funds, nothing can be done, but why could they not be put in, a capital improvements fund that we then go to council or whoever we go to when we want to take the money out? But either way, what you're talking about addresses that, and I
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah,
it.
we'll put that on paper so it's not confusing and you guys can get more stuff done. The other thing I just wanted to make sure we figure out as it relates to the civil engineering study everybody's talking about, I think everybody would agree if it doesn't exist, that things like that have to guide whether you have an endowment or
Right.
whatever the case may be. But I do think we need to be, I mentioned this earlier in the discussion, coordinated with whatever enhancements are being done to City Hall, because that could drive a large portion of what we
Yes.
need.
Yeah.
And we should just make sure we don't duplicate efforts or,
Exactly.
double spend
Right.
or, that's all.
Right, no, I'm on the same page. But whatever happens in the park is going to affect what's around it.
Mhm.
So we gotta have an understanding,
For sure.
yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for coming, and I really appreciate the idea of you continuing to come to RCDC and be kind of a liaison between Park Commission and RCDC. I think that's real helpful. And I do also appreciate all of y'all's thought and comments on all of the ideas of how to work with the Park Commission, how to support the improvements. I think that's all very productive discussion to have, and I appreciate y'all engaging in all of that. It is a frustrating process. I have to admit I was a little surprised at some of the frustration that I ran into at Park Commission, but I was glad that Park Commission ultimately did support this project. And I guess I don't have that much history with the Park Commission, and so some of that is a little bit new to me since I've only been on council since November. But I can certainly understand why it would be frustrating to be on a committee where you don't have a budget and can't make a final decision. But it's kind of a strange thing because we have this sort of three-way decision-making process going with Park Commission, RCDC, and Council to get anything done. And I'll tell you that when I started trying to look at what we could do in the park, I was looking for something that we could get consensus on. I don't really care what project we do. It's not like I'm picking my favorite project or anything. I was just looking for something that's doable and that we could get consensus on. And so the irony is that, like, that little project of a retaining wall and that little drainage problem by the field house is something that I've heard from Park Commission was something that needed to be addressed. And so from various members of Park Commission, but I guess maybe they hadn't collectively taken formal action on it. But it's even something that Brian Ryder brought up at our last meeting. He was like, what about the drainage around the pool house? And I was like, yes, I mean, around the field house. It's like, yes, that is in the works and it's coming. And it's something that I think is commonly known, or, in the community, that that's a kind of an obvious problem. So I thought it was a good one to start with because it's a well-defined problem and there's a well-defined solution to it that's pretty straightforward and simple. I do think that something that came out of the Parks Commission that is very helpful is the suggestion that we do an engineering study of the park to focused on drainage issues and where we can prioritize, and I've talked to city staff about that, and Ashley's going to talk to the engineers before our next council meeting to see if they can give us an idea of, could you give us a walkthrough in the park and looking at the topo and looking at issues around the park and just come up with a list of obvious drainage problems and define some potential solutions, not that we have to design them all yet, but just to have a list of projects that we might ultimately look at and prioritize. And I think a lot of that could be addressed in connection with the parking lot issues. Curbing can be a way that directs water. For example, we have a lot of water washing off the north side of the fields now and eroding that hillside. Maybe if we and also if you look at the east side of the parking lots between the ball fields and the pool, the swimming pool facilities, there's a terrible drainage problem over there. A lot of it is actually on Western Hills, the pool side of the fence. But still, we don't want to aggravate any drainage problems, and if we can mitigate them and work cooperatively with them to mitigate some of those, then that would be great. So we're going to see if the engineers will give us a proposal, if they could say, hey, we might do not to exceed $2,500 to just go through and identify some issues and make a list of potential projects. So that was a great suggestion that came out of Parks Commission. I know that some people are upset at the process of at the Parks Commission of how we come up with a project, but with this strange structure that we have, I think some of that's just frustration's inevitable, and I am glad that we were able to work through that at Parks Commission at least to get this project recommended. So if there's anybody's any questions or comments about the project or the process or anything else, I'd be happy to answer that.
The only question I have is on the selection of the contractor. It sounds like there's one guy who gave us a bid. Is that normal for the city not to get multiple bids on a project, especially spending that kind of money?
So the rule is,
If I just finish, I just say,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think we should get multiple bids on
Right.
a project. We're spending $30,000 would be my 2 cents.
okay. And council may say the same thing. I don't know. The rule is $50,000. If you have above $50,000, you need to get multiple bids. The reason that we didn't get multiple bids on this is in part because it's a little bit of a design build deal because when we met, and we did have Don Hudson from Parks Commission did meet with the contractor with me and was involved in that part of the process, and so did Phil McDuffie. But we found a mason who had 30 years experience, who's built a lot of retaining walls in rolling wood, and we had originally talked about building a masonry wall with rock face on it, which would be built with that cement block with rock face to match the existing wall. The masonry contractor suggested that we go with a quarry block that was cut, and actually some of the Park Commission members had suggested quarry block as being more attractive as well. He said it was cheaper. And so since it's not, I think that you might get something that's a couple of $1,000s cheaper. It might be a couple of $1,000s more, but from my perspective, I was just concerned with getting a competent contractor who'd give us what I thought was a fair price. I actually wasn't surprised by the price. I actually had been thinking it was about a $30,000 project. So we didn't get multiple bids, it's because it would be hard to get exactly apples to apples. Now that we've gotten a bid where he's kind of given us a proposal of materials and such, we could probably get apples to apples bids. But you get into issues of quality of work, and so I know I can get quarry block dropped out there and set for a lot less than that, but I don't know, how level it's going to be or how well it's going to be done. So I just know this masonry contractor is good. His daughter actually lives in Rollingwood. It's John Eatel's wife is the masonry contractor's dad. His name is Michael Williams, and he's been doing this 30 years here, so I was just impressed with him. But it's certainly a legitimate question and consideration.
Well, especially because so many times you get contractor bids in Westlake that can be higher than other parts of the city.
Yeah.
The premium.
Yeah.
The
Premium.
Westlake tax, as we like to say.
Right, exactly.
But I don't know, if you have the materials, getting a bid or two, I would feel more comfortable if we at least just had one more bid just to see, are we crazy or not?
Yeah.
I don't know. My 2 cents.
I didn't think that, that's just my perspective as having worked on the project. I just didn't think that the potential for saving a couple $1,000s was going to be worth the time and effort of vetting another contractor and trying to get them to bid it. But I mean, it's a legitimate, certainly a legitimate issue.
I had a similar inclination, however, also in the interest of what we're trying to do, which is where there are rules and things in place, if there truly is a rule that says at the $50K threshold, yeah, you got to draw that line somewhere. So I don't know. I mean, I had the same gut reaction as you, but I feel like if it's codified like that, that means there, as it relates to future things we would also want to do, it empowers us to be able to get things done and make some reasonable decisions. But if it's not, I would default immediately to Bobby's gut
Well,
feel.
here's my I've never built a retaining wall, so I have no idea what they cost. And if it's a couple $1,000 on 30, I go, I don't care. If it's half, then I do care. But I don't know if that's reasonable or not.
Yeah, you're not going to get it for half. I build a lot of stuff. I actually guessed this was a $30,000 project before we even bid it, just because I've built a lot of stuff. So, but it's not an unreasonable suggestion either. So, I mean, we'll take whatever direction you give us on it. I prefer to not have to go get another bid, just because it delays the project and it makes work for me, and there isn't anyone else who's going to do it. So,
Okay.
One thing I would hope to, we could use this as an example, and again, I think we talked about while we're moving over to having a little bit more structure and process around the way we do things, that we also don't want to hold up progress. But to that comment of like, hey, the way it takes to get things done right now with this three-headed monster is, you know, it just kind of is what it is. Hopefully with some of what we talked about today is we're saying that's not, it's not going to be the way it is in the future. And it's going to be much simpler, it's more straightforward and easy for the Parks Commission to have brought this in here and got it, you know, reviewed and approved, and for us to start, you know, undoing, you know, that 9 people on one project kind of thing. I hope everybody thinks that what we're trying to do will make it different next time.
and I do think that
I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying hopefully
No, I
better.
totally get what you're saying, and it's, again, a very legitimate point. I think that there has been division in the community in the past that, fortunately, I don't feel like I was involved in much, except as sort of an observer. I saw some of it from a distance. It's kind of one of the reasons I ran for city council, was because I thought, it's like, just going back to the whole issue of the dogs versus baseball, okay? To me, that was a false choice, and that there didn't need to be division over it, and that's why the first project that I wanted to work on was improving the ball field for everybody, because it's like, it makes things, you know, we can do things that are good for everybody. And we wanted to kind of demonstrate that it doesn't have to be a them or us deal. It's like everybody wins. There's usually room for a win-win deal in places. And then, you know, this project, I think, is an opportunity to just do something fairly simple and straightforward that we get done together, even though it may be that, you know, we get a little bruised along the way, but I mean, it makes it easier next time to talk about a project and work together on a project. I know certainly it'll be easier for me working with Parks Commission in the future on a project and knowing how to talk to people better, and we all learn lessons from, you know, the experience. In other words, we can build upon success, I think. And I think this project gives us an opportunity to build upon, to have a success and continue to try to build on success. So I appreciate y'all's time and attention and consideration.
Thank you. So I need any action to be taken?
I guess we can make a motion to, or I guess to vote on the approval of the $31,000, I think is what it was.
Contingent upon its alignment to the 50,000, to the project threshold, not requiring multiple bids.
Yeah.
Yeah, $31,600 was the bid.
Any, I mean, your approval is the expenditure of the EDC funds. The city, of course, is going to have to comply with any state law requirements for procurement.
Good.
Okay, that's helpful. Not our problem.
Here's the money, spend it if you
Well,
want.
we've got a
So we have a
Do we
motion.
adopt a budget, adopt a project for?
Do I have a second?
second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? Okay.
So it goes to the city council.
So it goes to the city council.
We'll
So
amend our budget for this. It'll be done here next year, budget year. 9/30. Oh, yeah.
We'll work with city staff on
Yeah.
amending the budget and coming back with the
Yeah.
appropriate
Right.
documents.
right.
The project could be finished by the end of the year.
Okay.
Okay.
In my opinion, this would be part of that $50,000 commitment
Yes.
towards the parks, just FYI, as we're looking at budgeting and forecasting.
Agreed. Okay, well, I am going to call this meeting to adjourn at 1:15. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.